Test. 1, 2, 3, test. عفوا لا يمكن سماع صوت المتحدث.
وتسلر مؤسس مشارك لمشروع الباروميتر العربي الذي أجرى منذ عام 2006 أكثر من 56 مسح واستطلاع رأي سياسي واجتماعي على عينات شملت 15 بلد عربي. كما كتب البروفيسور تسلر على نطاق واسع عن الصراع الإسرائيلي الفلسطيني، وقد نال كتابه تاريخ الصراع الإسرائيلي الفلسطيني تكريما وجوائز فكرية قيمة. وفي هذه المحاضرة سيقدم مارك تسلر لمحة عن مؤسسة الباروميتر العربي الذي يتابع الرأي العام العربي والتغيرات التي حدثت عليه منذ أكثر من 15 سنة في العديد من مجالات الحياة السياسية والاجتماعية والثقافية، ومن خلال مواضيع التدين والإسلام السياسي والحوكمة ومكانة المرأة. كما سيطرح بعض النتائج لهذه الاستطلاعات والتي سيركز فيها على موضوع الإسلام السياسي. والآن فليتفضل الدكتور محمد فريد لإدارة هذه المحاضرة مشكورا.
شكرا جزيلا. أول شيء أود أن أحييكم بيوم المرأة وكل تهانية لإخواتي وأمهاتنا وأخواتنا. So it's a happy Women's Day. First of all, because we are very tight on time really, and I wouldn't say much. Just a word to say that we are honored really to have Mark with us, a lifetime friend and friend also to our region. Distinguished scholar. I was lucky to be associated with him on a few occasions. I learned much from him on a scientific level and on a human level as well. Mark's works overlap some of our research interests here in trends. It's the study of Islamism. Also some of his findings on political Islam based on time series match some of our findings as well. So I wouldn't say too much about that. We would give the floor to Mark to enlighten us and give us an idea about he done on this topic and many other topics. The floor is yours, Mark.
Okay. Well, thank you all for coming. Probably good I didn't understand everything that was said about me.
But you understand mine, no?
So this first slide is just a little story. When I started doing public opinion work, which I did for my dissertation many years ago, people said, well, public opinion, that's kind of new to us. This was a long time ago. But, you know, you'll be fine as long as you avoid the three little teeny subjects that are not important. Just nothing on politics, nothing on religion, and nothing on women. And of course, what are we studying? We're studying politics, we're studying religion, and we're studying women and gender. So I prepared this presentation for a longer talk about the Arab Barometer. And I would encourage you to look into it if you're interested in public opinion. We've done, I don't know, about 60 surveys in many different Arab countries. We've been doing it for 16 years now, and there's a lot of information. This presentation was to introduce some of the different topics we talked about. It included women, it included domestic violence. I'm only going to talk now about the part of this that pertains to Islam and political Islam in particular. I'll talk about one project that is, it's a small project, but it's more or less we see the results. And then a couple of projects where I just show you descriptively what the data look like and there's more work to be done. They're not completed projects, but I think we can have a discussion about them, and certainly I'll try to answer questions. If you do want to learn more about the Arab Barometer, number one, this set of slides has a lot of information in it. I'm not going to present it now, but you have the slide, the PowerPoint, and you can look. Also, of course, Farid, or Dr. Farid, or Dr. Muhammad Farid, as you call him, knows very much about the barometer, and he can give you some guidance. Okay, the first project is something that was done. The barometer has been done in waves, and we did. I'm going to digress for just a quick second to show you one graph. Whoops, this one. So this tells you what countries we worked in, all the different years we've been doing surveys. What I'm going to talk about now is Egypt and Tunisia in wave 2 and wave 3 in response to the Arab Spring. Oops, sorry, I'm the wrong way. Oh, no, I'm not. Sorry, I am going the wrong way. Okay, yeah, this is it. So we did a survey in Tunisia and in Egypt, as well as other countries, in 2010 or 2011. These surveys were 2011. In both cases, they were done after the regime had collapsed or left. Ben Ali was gone, Mubarak was in jail. But then, and they were going to elections, but they hadn't had elections yet. In the Tunisian survey, we did it, I think maybe October 20, something like that, 2011, just a few days before the election. So we're asking people, what do they think about the major Islamist party, Ennahda in Tunisia, and the Ikhwan's party, Freedom and Justice Party in Egypt. What do they think about these? We know these were well-organized parties. We thought they would probably do well in the elections, and they won the elections. So we asked them before the election what they thought. And you can see in both cases, it's the first, I'm not very good with this, it's the first line here on top, that about half, oops. No, I'm sorry, I keep going the wrong way.
Mouse.
That's it, okay. Yeah, mouse would be good. So about half of the people we surveyed, and this is a nationally representative survey, probability-based, so there's always some imperfections, but in general, it's a good representation of the country. In both cases, about half of the people have something positive to say about the Islamist party. 49% of Tunisians have great trust in Ennahda. Same thing for Freedom and Justice, it's 47%. So we don't know for sure that that everybody voted for the party, but they probably did. They're saying that they like the party. Well, do you like the party's platform? What is the party's platform? Well, it's to have our country be governed more by Islamic codes. That raises a lot of questions. What do you mean by Islamic codes? Who interprets those codes? So there are a lot of additional questions, but in general, we find that in Tunisia, only about half of the people, and in Egypt, only about a third of the people want the implementation of a more Islamist orientation to government. We asked many questions. I've only had one here, and that's, do you agree or disagree that religious leaders should have influence over government decisions? Actually, one of about 5 questions, and we analyzed them together for some purposes, so this is a little bit oversimplified, but I think you can see. And the major takeaway is that there are almost, well, maybe not quite, but almost twice as many people who say something positive about the country as the number or the percentage who agree with an Islamist platform, that they want this party to do well in elections because it will bring Islam to government in a way that it isn't there beforehand. We call the people who have something positive to say, who say they trust the party. Thanks. Got it. Thank you very much. Okay. Now, when I don't do well with this, I have no excuse. And you'll see I'll make a mistake yet. So we have a lot of people who we're calling strategic voters. They're voting for the party not because of its platform, but in spite of its platform. We know that there are strategic voters everywhere, certainly in the US and other places. People who vote for the party for some reason other than its platform, other than its policies. They don't like the old regime. The old regime is too corrupt. The secular party isn't doing anything. There's actually some very interesting work on this election. There's a good book on Egypt. I'll give you the reference later if you're interested. Yeah, so we have these strategic voters. Okay, the Ennahda wins the election. It makes a coalition with a more secular party, but basically it's the winner. And the Islamists come to power, Ikhwan comes to power in Egypt. I might say I actually happened to be in Egypt during the time of the presidential elections, and we heard Egyptians arguing among themselves. Some say, this is the one chance we have to remove the army from our political system. That's what these people want. So we have to vote for the Islamists. Even if we don't like them so much, it's okay. We trust them. We need to take the opportunity to have this change. Others, and I know families where the wife is saying one thing and the husband is saying something else. No, you can't trust the Islamists. We can't let them come to power. So this just tells you what people think in an aggregate general way, but there are a lot of discussions and arguments under this that I'm kind of trying to give you a little bit of a feel for. Test. Okay, so now we go, that was wave 2. So now it's 2013. The first ones were 2011. Now it's 2013. And we are doing our survey again. It's not the same identical people. It's not what we call a panel study. But it is a study of the same population at 2 different points in time. And so what do people think now about Islamist platform? So we asked them again that question. Religious leaders should have influence over government decisions. And we see that the number of people who support it has declined very much. This is our chance to see what people think about the party, the Islamist party in power. It's been governing for about a year and a half, or even a little bit more than that in the Tunisian case, when we did the second survey. And here, in 2011, the survey that's on the previous slide, 37% agree strongly that, yes, religious leaders should have influence over government decisions. Yes, we want Islam in our political formula. Afterwards, after living under the party and Mohamed Morsi, the president, this 37% has dropped down to 20%. So a lot of Egyptians aren't nearly as enthusiastic about this as they were before. Tunisia, it's the same story, a little bit differently, where I would emphasize in Tunisia. Before 2011, 19% disagreed with the idea. No, in fact, disagreed strongly. No, we do not want religious leaders to have influence in government decisions. That number of people who disagree with this, who do not want religious leaders to have this influence, that's doubled to 38%. So we see a real decline in support, and a lesson that you could maybe draw, that we could maybe draw, is before the Islamist party is in power, when it's promising the kind of change that people have been waiting for, because they don't like the old regime, and that's why these are the 2 countries that led the Arab Spring. After living with this government for a while, it doesn't look so good anymore. And so the potential takeaway is judgments about Islamist party after it has served in power, after they've had a chance to see what it does. A lot of that support falls away. I will say, as you perhaps know, this is kind of a story that the Islamists don't like. Kind of says, well, this party was given a chance to govern. They've been campaigning for a long time. both Ennahda and the Ikhwan Party they're not new at the Arab Spring. They've been there for a long time in the past. And the lesson seems to be that, okay, we gave them a chance and they didn't do well, and people saw that they didn't do well. There is, and that's basically the story that these data show. There is more to be said about that. So, I mean, I was in both countries at some point during this period, and people said, you know, yes, the Islamist Party didn't do very well, but it's not because our political formula and our commitment to Islam is the reason. It's because the old guard sabotaged us. And they tell stories, you know, in Egypt, in 2012 and 2013, gasoline was in short supply. It was hard to get gas for your car. Things weren't going well. And as soon as the army came in 2013 and took over, all of a sudden, gasoline became available. All those lines at the gas stations disappeared. You could go and you would have gas right away. So supporters of the Ikhwan would say, you know, we were sabotaged by the old guard. All it is to say that while we have the bigger picture, there's things to argue about underneath this picture or inside this picture. Did the Islamist Party really fail? Why did it fail? Or did it fail because it was sabotaged by supporters of the old regime? In Tunisia, some of the same things. Okay, but if the first lesson is there are strategic voters, people who don't agree with the political formula, but nonetheless are prepared to support the party, we see that there are strategic voters, and it's on the strength of those strategic voters that the two parties won. If they had only received votes from people who want Islam to have more influence in government, that wouldn't have been enough to win. That's the first slide. On this slide, the takeaway is large segments of the population are much more negative on the party and on the platform of Islam having governance having influence over government decisions. A lot of that support has fallen away. In the judgment of a substantial proportion of the population in both countries think that the Islamist Party has failed. Islam in practice, our political Islam in practice, didn't look so good to the people as it did Islam as in the future. Okay, there's one other slide for this part, and that is we were wondering whether or not the lessons of Egypt and Tunisia were diffused. What about Algeria next door? Watching what's happening in Tunisia. Is it also thinking, even though we didn't have this experience, we just looked at the Tunisian experience, maybe now, I mean, there certainly have been Islamist parties in Algeria, and they have either participated or being denied participation in various elections. So the question about how would political Islam look if it were actually in practice, that's a question that Algerians would be interested in, and it has come up in some Algerian elections in the past. In fact, there are some studies that I could direct you to on this. So what did Algerians think watching this? Was there the same kind of change in Algeria from 2011 to 2013, reduced support or more opposition to this proposition, religious leaders should have influence over government decisions? Was there also a falling away of support in Algeria between 2011 and 2013? And in fact, we did that for 4 countries. Algeria was one of the 4 countries we looked at. And sorry about that. And here we have Algeria, Jordan, Palestine, and Iraq. And in all 4 cases, there was not a very big change between 2011 and 2013. There was a little change. The countries are different from one another. Support for political Islam is higher in some countries than it is in others. But the main takeaway is, in general, the pattern that we see in 2011 is pretty much living for a year or more under an Islamist government may reduce support for political Islam as a formula of governance, But simply watching that or seeing that from a distance, paying attention and seeing what's going on in Tunisia and Egypt, no, seeing it from a distance doesn't have the same impact as actually experiencing it. So that's one of the projects, and that's probably the main one I want to talk about. There's room for a discussion here, and actually for all of this, there's room for more analysis. The air barometer data, all 7 or 6 waves so far, we're doing the 7th wave now. If you remember that chart with the little check marks before all the different surveys, all of those data are available. You can go to the website and you can download any of them, some of them, all of them, and there's no reason why any of you who might be interested couldn't do some additional analysis. There's certainly more to be done. Okay, maybe if we'll have time, maybe I'll say a little bit more about the air barometer later if there's time, but I think we definitely want to get to questions and discussion. So I'm going to show you 2 other projects briefly, and I won't spend as much time on these. And I have to find them because they're not really the next ones. You saw this before. This is all information about, who funds the air barometer, how do we do our samples, what do we do to try and ensure that the data are credible and correct, valid and reliable. There's a bunch of stuff here on women that maybe would be fun to talk about. But I'm sticking to political Islam, and the one I want is, I think it's this one. No, it's coming, sorry. This is the one I want. Okay, so we ask questions about democracy. Things like, so one set of questions says, some people say democracy has, it's problematic because it promotes conflict. It gets people arguing against one another. One party says one thing, the other party argues with it. And so the result of democracy is really a lot of division and division and conflict. Or some people say, and maybe you agree, maybe you don't, this is the conversation we're having with the people we interview. Some people say democracy doesn't promote development. Yeah, it allows people to have free speech and stuff, and of course that's good. But we need development in our country, and democracy doesn't promote that development. So we asked a series of questions about possible problems associated with democracy. And people can say, no, there are no problems. It does not promote division. It does indeed promote development. So we pick and argue about that. Then we come to the question that is on this slide. So we say, even if there are limitations for democracy, whatever limitations, it's still the case that democracy is the best political system. It's better than any other political system. And we find that roughly about 80%, between 75 and 80% of the population agrees with this. And 20% or maybe 25%, no, democracy is not the best political system. It has problems. You've just talked about these problems because we asked those questions first about development or division. And so looking here at population from just these 4 countries down below. We've done it with a larger number of countries, but I picked these just because it's similar. So if you look across the rows, the first number before the slash, so among those, so here's what we're asking, that among people who support democracy, who say, yes, maybe it has problems, but it's still the best political system, what do they think about political Islam? Do these people who support democracy, do they want a political formula that is democratic and says Islam is important, you should follow your religion, but this is for you as an individual, it's not for our government. And we can see going across, the numbers are going to add up to 100. 65% of those who agree or agree strongly that yes, democracy, despite its limitations, is the best political system. may be following the faith, but it isn't known. And 35% say, no, we want democracy, but we want to Islam in matters of governance. That religious leaders should be able to have influence over government decisions. So we see that there's some division. It's 2/3 versus 1/3. If you go to the people who do not think democracy is the best political system, and there are fewer of them, what do they want? Again, it's about 2/3 to 1/3. That 64% want 64% say no democracy, and yes political Islam. Sorry, no political Islam. And then you have those who say no democracy and yes political Islam. The second number here is the overall percentage of all of the respondents in this table. The largest group, 51%, say we want secular democracy. Islam is a private individual matter. So we see that this is the position that the largest number, about half of all the respondents, take this position. We have 27%, those who say, I want democracy and I also want political Islam. Could have an interesting conversation. Well, what would the formula of governance that that these people would endorse, what would it look like? There are a lot of questions that come up here. There's a question about, so what is it that pushes people or predisposes people to want secular democracy? Are they more likely to be the younger people? Are they more likely to be the people in the cities? Are they more likely to be religious or maybe less likely to be religious? What are the determinants or the pushes that get people into this category? Category here that I think is kind of interesting, it's only 14% of all respondents, but that's not a totally trivial number. What does secular authoritarianism look like? Kind of thinking, well, we had this during the Nasser period and during the Bourguiba period in Tunisia. These were regimes that were strong, not very democratic, but they had the power and the strength to carry out important reform. If we're going to have land reform, you know the people who oppose land reform, who have that land, they're going to try to use the political system to prevent you from doing this. So we need a strong leader to do that. We need someone like Nasser, somebody like Bourguiba. So I'm really not going to spend much more time on this, but there's a series of questions that come. How should we understand the political formula or the conception of political life and political organization that responds to or fulfills the aspirations of people who want, yes, democracy, it's the best political system, no political Islam. Islam is an individual matter. So how should we think about these four different political formulas, especially the ones that most people endorse? And how should we think about the reasons? What leads a person? Looking for a hypothesis. Would you say that people who are better educated are more likely to favor secular democracy? And if you'd say, yeah, I think so, I'd say, well, maybe you're right. Give me a reason. Why would that be the case? Why would better educated people pick this position? And no matter what you say, we don't know if you're right or wrong. We'll have to do the analysis, and we'll find out maybe your ideas were right and maybe not. So this is a foundation for a lot of additional work. I mean, both in terms of conceptualization, making sense, practical sense of these different formulas, and of determinants, and of what we call causal inference or causal stories. What is it that pushes a person to favor any particular one of these formulas? Here you have, for 4 countries, this is the countries taken all together at the top. Now we have this, if you want to see what it looks like in Algeria or Jordan or Palestine or Tunisia, you can take a look. In all cases, the one that's highest is this one here, it's this one here. That's democracy, but not political Islam. That's secular democracy. In all 4 countries, that's the one that is preferred much more frequently than any other political story. Okay, so that's the second project I want to introduce you to. There's one more coming. So the first was strategic voters living under an Islamist government. Second one is political formulas. What about democracy? What about political Islam? The last one has to do, I think it's next. Yeah. So the last one has to do with the Islamic State, with Daesh. We had a survey experiment. We did it in these 5 countries, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Jordan, and Palestine. We asked 3, in fact, we asked more than 3, but the 3 questions. We asked a series of questions about the Islamic State. And we're asking people, do you agree with their goals? They want an Islamic caliphate. They want governance in accordance with Islamic law, as they interpret that law. What about their methods? They use a lot of violence. They believe that violence is necessary to accomplish these goals. They're killing a lot of people. Many of the people they're killing are not Muslims, but many are Muslims, so they're killing Muslims as well as non-Muslims. But sometimes maybe you have to do things like that if you're going to achieve your objectives. So what do you think about that? You'll see a little bit later what the responses are. It's coming up on the next slide. And we asked them, to what extent do you believe the Islamic State's tactics or actions are compatible with the teachings of Islam? So they offer their interpretation, and it's a justification for the things they're doing and why they argue their goals are important. Is all of that consistent, compatible with the teachings of Islam? What do you think? It's very compatible, it's somewhat compatible, it's not compatible at all. Okay. And in addition to these questions, these 3 questions here and several more that are not on this slide, we are conducting an experiment. So we are randomly dividing, hope this will be clear, we are randomly dividing the people we are interviewing, the population in these 5 countries, into 5 groups. 5 groups. And one is a control group. This means these people are not told anything in particular about the Islamic State. They're given just, we say now we're going to turn to another topic, and that topic has to do with the actions of a group that has received a lot of attention. This was done, by the way, in 2016. It was the 4th wave of Air-Barometer surveys, and it was done at a time that the Islamic State was doing very well from its point of view. Had good part of Iraq and Syria, and so the idea was on people's minds. So this control group, these are people who weren't told anything more. Then we had 4 other groups. One group was told, here it's written out here in English, the Islamic State has emerged as a potent force in the Middle East. Its goal is to extend the Islamic Caliphate across the Muslim world, and for that purpose, it has killed many Muslims and many non-Muslims in support of the same. So we're telling them something, and the 2 messages here are, it's the caliph, they want a caliphate, and they're prepared to use violence and kill people to get it. And we're going to compare people who got this treatment. So you need to understand that this is an experimental design. Some people don't get anything, and they're the control group. And then a different set of people get a certain message, or sometimes they're called primes, sometimes they're called treatments. And we're going to see whether the people who got this treatment have any attitudes or any judgments or any responses to these 3 questions that are different for the control group. It's a way to find out whether or not the treatment or the message in the treatment, whether it did or did not make a difference. We'll compare it to the control group. Then we had 3 more treatment groups. All 3 got this first statement, the Islamic State has emerged as a potent force. They get that, and something else. And they also get, they also have a goal that to them is important, and that is limiting the influence of Shia populations across the Muslim world, and to and to confront Iranian-led Shiite forces in Lebanon, Iraq, Yemen, and elsewhere. So they're kind of saying, yes, there's the caliphate. Yes, they're prepared to use violence to make progress toward it. They have other goals as well, and one of them is to contain or confront Iran and Shia populations and militias that that are seeking influence. And the Islamic State says that's terrible. We can't have that. Our goal is to be against them. And by the way, where did these treatments come from? We looked at ISIS or Daesh's messages. What kind of messages is it sending in its social media activities? What is it telling people that it hopes to win to its cause and maybe persuade people to join their country, to join their movement? And many do. I think Tunisia was the country sent the largest number to Syria to join the Islamic State. So this group this has its own publicity and media campaign to tell people what its objectives are, why these objectives are important, and hopefully motivate some people to go and join them and join the battle for these objectives. The other treatments are to contain the influence of secular Arab leaders and those elites whose goal is to limit the role of Islam in public life. And the last one is to to reduce or eliminate the influence of U.S. and Western powers in our region. So we have these questions that are asked to people, and then we have these 5 groups, 4 different treatment groups, and a control group to which can be compared. This is, the slide at the top is the answers to these 3 questions independent of the survey. So what did people say in response to these 3 questions in all 5 of the countries? We can see, one, that the numbers are low. Wait a second. Sorry, this is a little different than what I said. This is not everybody. Well, it is everybody, but the hypothesis we're testing is it the case? Who are the people that ISIS is trying to recruit? Maybe anybody who's willing to go and join it, but it has what we called for this work a key demographic, a particular segment of the population that would be potentially most receptive to the message that ISIS is sending out, and this would be hypothesis. Might or might not be the case. Hypothesis: it's younger people, it's certainly men, and it's people who are not all that well educated. Certainly no more than a high school education, maybe didn't even finish high school. So there is this group that ISIS is, it's sending its message to anybody who will be responsive, but in particular, it's sending its message to try to attract support and participation by younger, well-educated men. And this graph for each of the countries and for each of the topics, compares the views of younger, less educated men to the views of the rest of the population. So I won't go through every number in this, but the takeaways are as follows. We can come back to this in discussion if you want. One, that the positive responses to these questions are low. Here in Jordan, 1.9% say 1.9% of the younger, less well-educated individuals or male individuals, only 1.9% say yes. I agree with the goals of Daesh. Among others is 1.5%. So the second takeaway is that our thought that this would be the group that would have the most positive attitudes towards Daesh. The data do not support that. We were mistaken. This turns out it's not the key demographic that we thought it was. So our hypothesis has been rejected, and of course hypotheses always are. That's the way you learn. So in general, the numbers are very small, 0.9%, 1.4% about tactics in Jordan. You can go to any one of these. In Tunisia, 2.3% of less well-educated men, and only 2.7 of the rest. So the numbers are low, and they're more or less equally low for this so-called key demographic, younger people who are less well-educated. So we still need to find out, so who is it that is more likely to have positive attitudes? It's not younger, less well-educated. Maybe there isn't any demographic, but maybe we need to add something more. Maybe we need to have some economic factors or some religious factors. So this is a really interesting data set to play around with. I've published one paper on it. There's certainly a lot more to be done. So generally, very low levels of support. Generally, not much difference between younger, less educated men and everybody else. There is a third takeaway from the top, and that is that there are two countries where the numbers are still somewhat low, but not nearly as low, and that is Palestine and Algeria. If you just look, you can see Palestine and Algeria stand out for all three questions. There's kind of an interesting story here in Tunisia about compatibility with Islam. Talk about that separately if you want. But in general, for Palestine, Palestine and Algeria, the populations have higher levels of support. Why might that be the case? You have to be careful answering a question like that. We don't want to promote stereotypes, but it is the case that of the 5 countries, 3, it's consistent, it's very low, and 2, it's sort of low, but not nearly as much. So this is kind of a description of what we have. Here now, the bottom one, this is the last slide I'm going to show, we look at the impact of these treatments. This is the control group, people who were not given any additional information about Daesh, and were simply asked to answer these 3 questions. And then here are people who got each of the treatments. Just to simplify things, I think it's safe to say that all of the treatments push down support. People, and this is among younger, less well-educated men, this demographic up here. And maybe we'll need to redo this table because it turns out this demographic doesn't really explain all that much. But we can see that among those who don't get any other additional information, it's higher than it is up here. It's over 10%. That's a lot. Among those who have had a treatment, it goes down. Goes down more for some treatments than others, and we might have a conversation about that. But the main takeaway is that if you give people information about the methods and the goals of Islamic State, people who get that message are less likely to support it than people do independently. And so the policy, as I said, this was done in 2016. The policy implications are give people information about the Islamic State. That, the experiment shows, is going to reduce their support. Or if you want to reduce support, this is one way to do it. Okay, so I think I'm about ready to stop. The first one is simply to take you through the question of what we learned from Egypt and Tunisia in the wake of the Arab Spring. Then something about formulas of governance. What does it mean to want democracy and also political Islam as the formula by which your country is governed? What does that mean? And who are the people that take that view? What pushes people to embrace that view? And then finally, the last one, what do people think about the Islamic State? How do they respond to questions about goals, tactics, and compatibility with Islam? And do these treatments make a difference? Yes, they do. So I'm going to stop there. I probably should have stopped a few minutes ago and invite your comments or questions.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mark, for this very enlightening presentation. And of course, I know that we are very short on time, and then we could have even learned more detailed information. But I would just like to add one observation or two in concerning the first findings that you presented concerning the decline of the Brotherhood. You treated this problem as just for information, this questionnaire that these findings come from is a very long questionnaire, and it has about maybe 200 questions. Among those, about a dozen questions relating to political Islam. Mark has worked on 4 or 5 questions that he just showed, and he showed how the decline happened. I myself worked on one question. It was trust in Brotherhood. It was a clear question. Well, it was a compound question, in fact. How much do you trust this and that? Among them was the Brotherhood. And in fact, it is consistent with your findings, and it shows that the trust in Brotherhood declined since the first question was asked in 2011, and the last data that I had visited was 2019. So it goes from 47% of positive views to 19%. This is a huge decline, and it's very much consistent with what you just have told us. The second remark I would like to make concerning democracy and what political formula is much appreciated. And in fact, I think you are aware of the last article that Amani and Robin, these are also famous academics in the United States who are also among the Arab barometers, and they wrote a very good piece of work last week in foreign policy, I think, and it was to do why the public opinion in our region is more tending to authoritarianism. You know, why democracy is looked a little bit, there are less people having a positive view on democracy, but more maybe leaning toward the Chinese model, the authoritarian model. It was a very interesting thing, and they use also the data coming from the same. So of course, what happens in the Arab Spring and the political experience that we had in Tunisia and Egypt and Syria and Yemen and all that made people really tending toward, and a very interesting piece of work to look at. And I think that's all I have said, and then please, if any question or remark, the floor is yours. تفضلي تفضل محمد. Ladies first, this is their day.
First of all, thank you for being here.
This is Rahaf. This is all of.
So my name is Rahaf. First of all, thank you for being here and for your fruitful presentation. I'll try to be very brief, but my question is, to what extent does, opinion polls or public...
A little louder, please.
Oh, sorry. My question is, to what extent does public opinion or opinion polls influence, decision-making organizations, and how can they avoid inaccuracies or misinformation of these polls?
Okay, that's a very good question. We do what we can to diffuse this information so people see at least some of the general descriptives, what percentage said this and so forth. And we have an active website. We don't have a really good mechanism for sort of making sure that leaders of the country see this and pay attention to it and discuss it. But we are active on social media. Our website is active. We had, in 2021, last year, we had 297,000 hits that people logged on, so that's pretty good. And we had about 30,000 downloads. Maybe they either downloaded the data or they downloaded some of the reports that are there, or both. So we think that dissemination is really important. We started doing presentations in country. One member of our team who is from Jordan has done some of the ones in Arabic. I've done some in French. I mean, the one I did more recently, just before the pandemic kind of closed things down, was in Rabat, Morocco, and a research institute led by two Moroccan scientists, so one a political scientist and one an historian, organized this. We had a good turnout. I can't say I really know exactly who was there, but we had a lot of discussion after that. I'll tell you one quick story, and then I'll have to move on. I was asked to talk about the Arab Barometer at a program sponsored by something called the National Democratic Institute. It's a kind of a politically collected NGO in Washington. It doesn't particularly have attitudes or positions on foreign policy issues, so it just tries to promote scholarship. So they had some funds, and they organized a workshop in Norway, in Oslo, to which they invited leaders of Arab political parties, not leaders necessarily who were in government, but leaders of political parties. And I think there were six countries represented there. And I was asked to talk about the Arab Barometer. I think they had two presentations in the morning, two in the afternoon. So I was the first one in the afternoon to talk about the barometer. So I started showing, even this is a little bit more analysis and talking about determinants. That was simply really just descriptives. What percentage of the population said this or that, and was it the same or different for men and women, older and younger people? And so they started to argue kind of among themselves. This can't be right, or yeah, true, this country, but not this other country. And from my point of view, that was the purpose. Let them really engage with the data. And my response was, if you don't like what we're showing you, maybe our methodology is flawed, and maybe you feel comfortable dismissing it because you just don't trust the methodology. Or maybe you kind of know it's right, but you kind of don't want to admit that. So go back and decide whether there's something in here that should influence how you promote different policies and so forth. Anyway, the bottom line is they were so caught up in their discussion. This is the first half of the afternoon presentation. Person who's ready to do the second half, who's been waiting and probably spent a lot of time preparing, they won't stop. So, yes, okay, this is important. I'm glad that really people find this interesting. Hopefully you'll think about it and decide whether it's useful or not. Let's move on to, no, we have more to say on this. And the poor person who was the second speaker in the afternoon never got on because this audience based on political leaders from a number of Arab countries just engaged so much. So I mention that only to say that we have a little evidence that the findings are provocative, and people decide what they think about it and argue in favor or against. And we look for opportunities to present it to the extent we can. Same question? Well, I'll give the answer again.
تفضل.
أنا عندي سؤال بخصوص الرأي العام العربي. هو يعني اشتغل كثير في هذه المنطقة ويعرف التحولات اللي صارت من 2011 إلى 2000 إلى آخر فترة، وهو يعني يشرف على مشروع الباروميتر العربي. هل الرأي العام العربي بشكل عام، يعني أنا أسأل لأنه يختلف ممكن من بلد إلى بلد، يقول ما يدور في باله بصراحة في الاستمارات، أم من يعني يعطي الإجابة المنتظرة أو المتوقعة منه؟ وسؤال متصل فيه ثاني، هل ممكن نحن نقيس الرأي العام مثلا عبر وسائل أخرى مثلا في السوشيال ميديا؟ هل بتكون منطقية أكثر من الاستمارات؟ تفضل دكتور.
You got some of it, huh? Yeah.
but not enough. You have to translate.
Yeah, the first question was related to whether the people answering the question, is this the real opinion or there's something else to add? And the second one, do we have other means to go through the public opinion apart from the question, the classical questionnaire like social media and all that? Is that a good mean as well?
Yeah. So there are things that we do to try to ensure that people give us an honest answer. It's hard to be 100% positive. There are certain criteria. I mean, and a couple of them, they're kind of standard and widely known, and the terms that reference them are reliability and validity. So we can run some tests. It doesn't prove that there's no problem, but I mean, we can really spot inconsistencies. People who answer this question one way and a question on a different on the same subject very differently. Well, there's something going on there. Maybe it's not working for this person. If that's the case for a lot of respondents, it's telling us that these questions aren't as good as we thought they were, and maybe we need to throw them out and replace them with something else the next wave. In general, because we pre-test the questions before we actually do the survey, because the questions themselves are formulated. That's what this picture down here is to show. People sometimes say, well, where did these questions come from? This is a meeting of the participants or the leaders of the Arab Barometer in every country, or at least most of the countries, and some of us from the States. And we spend a couple days arguing and talking about putting the questions together. What usually happens is we have 2 hours worth of questions, and we start arguing, well, you can't cut this, I need this question. It's to say that there's a lot of thought and participation in formulating these questions. Then, of course, there's a pretest. Then there's after-the-fact analyses to see if the questions offer evidence of being reliable and valid. We have pretty extensive quality control, and so I think we do as much as can be done. We have thrown out data. I don't have time to tell you stories now, but there have been a couple of cases where we've thrown out all the data from a country. They just didn't do a serious job, and we paid for it, and we didn't get our money back, but we're not going to put the data in. We just know they're no good. And there have been some cases where some part of the data, as I say, if I had more time, I could tell you some interesting stories about why did we have to take 80, why did we throw out 80 questionnaires from the Moroccan survey? Well, there's a reason. So it's to say the question is really important, and we're serious about it, acknowledging that it can never be 100% perfect.
You spoke about just to get you on one point, you spoke about the cost. I just want you to tell us, how much does it cost? Just to have an idea, because
I should have people guess. The first, I did my own surveys early in my career when I did my dissertation. I was the one that did the interviews. The first survey in this sort of modern period, I went to Algeria. We'd already done a project in Algeria. This was after the project we did with you and Bencian and so forth. And I went there, myself and a grad student, to work with some of the Algerian professors in Algiers, not in Oran, to put together a survey. And I had $19,000, and that was enough. Today, it varies from country to country, and it also depends on the circumstances. But we rarely, I don't know if we do any for less than $50,000 today. And
one sample?
One country.
One country?
Yeah. Although I will say the size of our samples has doubled. And a lot of the expense is paying the people who are in the field doing the interviews. And of course we spend a lot of, not we, but there's a lot of training for them beforehand, both in general and about the particular questionnaire that they're going to be administering, in terms of quality. But for some of them up, it's 90,000 or more.
This is what my colleague here to know that it's expensive.
Yeah, it is expensive.
Sorry, about the social media stuff, because you're running out of time, huh?
Yeah.
Is it
Yeah,
is it reliable?
I think it is reliable, but it's a different population. our procedures allow us to say with pretty good confidence that this is representative of the country as a whole. Social media is telling you about a population that's active on social media, but for certain kinds of questions, the data are very good, and there are, sometimes you kind of pick out and talk about 3 or 4 that are typical of what they show overall. There are more systematic ways. I don't know if anybody here knows about what a word cloud is, but it's a visual representation of what the content of this media message was, and it's really fun to look at. I don't think of a picture here, but the words that that you find most often are bigger. Words that kind of go together. You see it this way, and it's a whole circle with all. So, and that's a representation of a way that is actually quite systematic. So sure, these are good data, but maybe not for exactly the same question. Maybe, okay.
Is there أي سؤال؟
في سؤال؟ ما فيش سؤال? Okay, so I think I've answered every. So it's so complete that nobody could even imagine another question. And as soon as we leave, they're going to say, "Well, but he didn't say this," or "How come? What about that?"
It's really refreshing, and then.
So thank you very much for your attention, and I'll end by just saying that these data are available. You can do a lot. You can even analyze them online without.
I've been stealing from you a lot.
Perfect. Okay, so that's great.
في ختام هذه المحاضرة نشكر البروفيسور مارك تسلر على حضوره لمركز ترندز. مرة أخيرة بالنيابة عن دكتور محمد العلي أشكرك شكرا جزيلا بروفيسور مارك. Thank you.
I'm happy you made it. It's very good.
Yes.
That's very interesting. شكرا. شكرا الفرصة هذه.